Good afternoon, all of you. How are you all? I welcome you to this session called 15 Questions to Score 99 Percentile in VARC. Remember, there are no magic pills. It's not like these 15 questions are going to come in the exam. That's not the idea. Basically, we are going to talk about what all question types you need to cover. Okay, what all question types you need to understand, how you need to approach them, which will eventually help you to reach 99 plus percentile in VARC. That is the goal of this session. Okay, so let's begin. Let's begin this discussion. Now, the discussion should always start from what all has come in the past, right? What all has been asked in the past. So, if you look here carefully, we broadly have four question types, right? So, reading comprehension, then parajumbles, parasummary. In parajumbles, you have two types, sequence parajumbles and odd sentence out parajumbles, right? So, all of us know this much. Yes, if you've started preparing, then of course you must have seen the past year's paper pattern. So, today what I'll do is, see, in the VARC booster series that has been going on, we have a VARC booster series going on for CAT 2022. Okay. So there I have discussed a para summary with you. Okay, this I have discussed with you. I have also discussed odd sentence out parajumbles with you. Now, in the coming sessions, I will talk about sequence parajumbles also. So I thought, why not focus on RC passages today? What all question types can be asked under RC passages? Why not see this, learn this through an RC passage, right? So we will discuss some question types that you need to learn how to approach today, okay? And some question types will be discussed in a part 2 of this session because I felt that we need to discuss these in detail. We need time for it. So this is part 1 of this two-part series, right? 15 questions to score 99 plus percentile in VARC. Now, coming to reading comprehension. Okay, so before I begin, I'm sure you must have seen some RC passages of previous years, right? You must have come across some questions. So you tell me what all question types are really asked when it comes to RC passages. Hello, Radha. Yes, tell me. What all question types are asked? Come on, come on. Waiting for your responses. Good afternoon, Vishal. So last year, 4 passages with 4 questions each were asked in the exam, right? These were from diverse genres, history, science, philosophy, etc. Now, all of them, the questions, they had a type, right? And therefore, a technique was required to approach these questions. So I am asking you, what all question types did you encounter? Yes. Were they all direct that you could find the answers within the passage? Were they all of this type? Come on, come on. If you're not responsive, then what's the point? Central idea of the passage, right? So we had direct questions, right? We had a question that asked us about the main idea or the central idea of the passage, right? What else? Central idea questions, we did have them. Okay, yes, Vishal. So you're talking about the genres. I'm talking about the types of questions. There were some indirect questions which required our understanding and our deriving something, concluding something from the paragraph. These are called inference questions. Yes, and so on and so forth. This list is a long list, right? So there can be a number of question types in RC passages. So what I have done is I have prepared a list of question types based on an analysis of all your past year papers since CAT began, right? So we will look at some portions of this list, some elements of this list today, and some in the coming part 2 of this session. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's go through an RC passage. So we will read an RC passage, we'll understand it, then we'll look at the questions, and from the questions I'll tell you, okay, this question is of this type and this is how you should approach it, right? Let's proceed in that manner. That will be a more practical learning, right? Synonyms, antonyms, yes, they can be asked. However, if you look at the past 5-6 years papers of CAT, you will realize that direct vocabulary or even vocabulary as a part of RC passages has not really been asked. Okay, so this can be asked in your non-CAT exams. All right. So let's start reading an RC passage together. Okay, we'll understand some terms, we'll look at some words also in the process, right? It's about creativity. The very first word is creativity. Creativity is at once our most precious resource and our most inexhaustible one. As anyone who has ever spent any time with children knows, every single human being is born creative. Every human being is innately endowed with the ability to combine and recombine data, perceptions, materials, and ideas and devise new ways of thinking and doing. So far, what I've read is that everyone possesses creativity and it's a very precious resource. What fosters creativity? What actually promotes creativity, nurtures creativity? More than anything else, the presence of other creative people. More than anything else, the presence of other creative people is what fosters creativity. The big myth is that creativity is the province of great individual geniuses, that it is their territory. Okay, that's a big myth, the author says, that only great individual geniuses possess creativity. In fact, creativity is a social process. Our biggest creative breakthroughs come when people learn from, compete with, and collaborate with other people. Right? So, this is what the first paragraph talks about. When you read this passage, see the opening paragraph always has to be read carefully. Okay, because this is the one that is helping you dive into the passage to make some sense of what this passage is likely to be about, right? So always read this carefully. You need not hurry through it. Opening paragraphs are important. So, and besides, you're starting to read something, you're in the process of getting into the flow. You've still not got into the flow. So I would not recommend reading these very speedily. Okay, so we've gathered some key ideas here, right? Creativity is a precious and inexhaustible resource, and every individual possesses it. What is required to foster it? Presence of other people. It's a social process, right? This is all that we have gathered. Now, second paragraph. Cities are the true fonts of creativity. With their diverse populations, dense social networks, and public spaces where people can meet spontaneously and serendipitously, they spark and catalyze new ideas. So, cities are, in a way, the breeding ground for creativity, right? That is where creativity fosters. Why? Because they have diverse populations, people from various walks of life, from various, let's say, race, religion, castes, socio-economic backgrounds live there. They have dense social networks. These people are connected to each other through multiple ways. So there are people living in your society, there are people at your workplace, there are people in your college. So dense social networks and public spaces. Of course, there are a lot of public spaces available in the city, right? There are malls, there are parks, etc. Where people can meet spontaneously, right? And serendipitously. What is serendipity? Who will tell me? Serendipity. Yes, come on. People can meet in cities serendipitously. So, what is serendipity? Does it have something to do with pity? Hmm. There's this movie also called Serendipity. So, serendipity is a word that actually comes from a fairy tale. Okay. I have forgotten that fairy tale, but it has some brothers who go on these adventures and they are very lucky in these adventures. Okay. Now, from that story comes this word serendipity. So, serendipity is a fortunate accident, a stroke of luck, a stroke of fortune. So basically, when you meet somebody accidentally and it turns out to be really lucky for you, that is serendipity, right? When two people meet by accident, they start liking each other, okay, decide to spend their whole life. So they say that, okay, we met serendipitously. That is serendipity, a fortunate accident. right? Something that happens by chance and proves to be lucky for you. So, in cities, people can meet spontaneously and serendipitously. They spark and catalyze new ideas. With their infrastructure for finance, organization, and trade, they allow those ideas to be swiftly actualized. Right? So, now imagine this. Let's say you met a neighbor in the park. You hadn't really met this neighbor earlier. Now, the two of you start discussing uh, a recipe. Okay, out of the top of my head. So you start discussing a recipe of a new dish that you haven't really encountered anywhere. Now, because nearby there's a shop, you are able to purchase the ingredients for that, right? So now you decide to bake this dish together. So the point is that in addition to that idea, you also needed that infrastructure, that you needed a shop from where you could purchase this. So with their infrastructure for finance, organization, and trade, they allow those ideas to be swiftly actualized. Two people meet and they decide to start their own business, a startup, right? Now, for that startup to actually materialize, they need money. So cities provide that infrastructure for finance. They need materials, so they have that structure for trade. They need to organize what they have accumulated, so cities provide go downs, etc., for that. So basically they allow those ideas to be swiftly actualized, realized also. Okay, now moving on to the next slide. As for what staunches creativity, that's easy if ironic. Staunch. Now you have to, let's say you do not know the meaning of staunch. I want you to read this paragraph and guess the meaning of staunch. That's why I've highlighted this in blue. Right? Guess the meaning of staunch as it has been used here. As for what staunches creativity, that's easy if ironic. It's the very institutions that we build to manage, exploit, and perpetuate the fruits of creativity. Our big bureaucracies, and sad to say, too many of our schools. Creativity is disruptive. Schools and organizations are regimented, standardized, and stultifying. Yes, staunch, meaning of this verb here. What staunches creativity? Come on, be participative. Otherwise, what's the point? As I said earlier. So, what are these institutions really doing? Are they promoting creativity? Are they fostering creativity? Tell me. Are these institutions fostering creativity? Big bureaucracies, and sad to say, the author says sad to say, too many of our schools. They are really not promoting it. They are rather restricting it. They're stopping it. Okay. They are stifling it in a way. So, staunch means to restrict. Simple. As for what restricts creativity, that's easy if ironic. So the author thinks that it's ironic. There is a question based on this later on, so I'll not explain the meaning here. You have to infer the meaning from this paragraph. So, as for what restricts creativity, that's easy if ironic. It's the very institutions that we build to manage, exploit, and perpetuate the fruits of creativity. Our big bureaucracies, and sad to say, too many of our schools. Creativity is disruptive. What is disruptive? A disruptive technology. Yes, creativity is disruptive. Good, Anirban. It was curb the growth. Radha, you are correct. As an adjective, staunch means a very loyal supporter. A staunch supporter is a loyal supporter. So, but as a verb, it means to restrict. So creativity is disruptive. That means it changes the way you do things, isn't it? It's meant to change the way you do things. Schools and organizations, on the other hand, they are pretty standardized. There is a set way of doing things, right? They are regimented. Everybody does those things in the same way. A regiment, a military regiment, it behaves in the same way, right? They walk in the same way, they follow the same rules. So, schools, in a similar manner, schools and organizations are regimented, standardized. What would stultifying mean? Stultifying? Yes, stultify. It is a synonym of look at the words around it. No, regimented, standardized. We're talking about staunching something. So stultifying again means something that just stifles, it restricts creativity, freedom, etc. Okay, so again, restricting freedom, restricting anything. Okay, that is stultifying. So stultifying something that is restrictive in nature, and usually restricting the good things, freedom, initiative, etc. Right? Okay. So see, this vocabulary is important, isn't it? Now, CAT, as I told you, does not ask you any direct vocabulary questions. There are no synonym antonym questions that you've been asked later on. But in case you didn't know these words, let's say you hadn't ever heard of words like staunches, disruptive, regimented, stultifying, then you would face a bit of a problem in understanding this paragraph. That is why, even though CAT is not asking you direct vocabulary, we still keep on telling you to actually learn new words, right? To accumulate new words. I keep recommending word par made easy like anything to students because of this. Because if you know, these are high frequency words, these are used often. So if you go through these vocabulary books, if you read more and more, you will automatically gather these words. Okay, they'll get stored in your brain. Okay, so vocabulary is important, opening paragraphs are important, then reading and understanding the key ideas is very important. So the key idea that we gathered here was that there are certain institutions that are staunching creativity, yes, that are restricting creativity. Now, coming to the next paragraph. The education expert Sir Ken Robinson points to a 1968 study reporting on a group of 1600 children who were tested over time for their ability to think in out of the box ways. So, this study actually took 1600 children and was testing their ability to think in out of the box ways. When the children were between 3 and 5 years old, 98% achieved positive scores. 98% thought in out of the box ways. When they were 8 to 10, only 32% passed the same test and only 10% at 13 to 15. When 280,000 25-year-olds took the test, just 2% passed. See, by the time they turned 25. So by the time we are adults, our creativity has been wrung out of us. What does this mean? To wring something out of a person, WRING, has been wrung out of us. By the time we are adults, creativity, again, see, if you do not know the exact meaning, you need not, right? You just have to understand the sentence. So just look at the words around it. The creativity has been wrung out of us. That means it has been sort of taken out of us, twisted out of us, right? So that is the meaning of wringing something out of someone, right? So I do not need to know the exact meanings, but yes, I should know when this word is used, how this word is used. That is important. All right. So ring is the verb here. The past participle is rung, right? Now, what it means is to actually twist something, okay, to take something out of another thing. So to squeeze something out, that is to wring something out of something, right? I once asked the great urbanist Jane Jacobs what makes some places more creative than others. She said essentially that the question was an easy one. That, okay, the answer to this question is actually easy. All cities, she said, were filled with creative people. That's our default state as people. But some cities had more than their shares of leaders, people, and institutions that blocked out that creativity. Okay, so some cities had more than their shares of leaders, people, and institutions that blocked out that creativity. She called them squelchers. So she had her own term for it, squelchers. Now, again, you need not know the meaning of the word squelch, okay? Because here she is explaining it to you. This is what the term means to her. People, institutions, etc., that are blocking creativity, she called them squelchers. Squelch is a word in English. Now, the meaning is yes, to basically suck something out of something else, right? That is squelching. So, she called these people squelchers. Now, creativity or the lack of it. Creativity or the lack of it follows the same general boundaries, contours, outline, follows the same general outline of the great socio-economic divide, our rising inequality. that plagues us. Okay, that troubles us. So creativity it follows in line with the great socio-economic divide. If the socio-economic divide is big, if there are a lot of inequalities in the society, then there will be less creativity. If there are not I mean the inequality is low, then there will be a high degree of creativity, right? According to my own estimates, the author is saying this, roughly a third of us across the United States and perhaps as much as half of us in our most creative cities are able to do work which engages our creative faculties to some extent, whether as artists, musicians, writers, techies, innovators, entrepreneurs, doctors, lawyers, journalists, or educators. Those of us who work with our minds. That leaves a group that I term the other 66%. So that leaves, see, because roughly a third of us across the US, the author has mentioned, no, are able to actually do creative things, right? That leaves a group that I term the other 66% who toil, who work hard in low wage, rote and rotten jobs. Rote rote learning, when you do the same, when you are rote memorizing something, you repeat the same thing again and again. So rote here refers to repetition. And rotten jobs, the author thinks these jobs are rotten, if they have jobs at all, in which their creativity is subjugated, ignored, or wasted. Okay, so the 66% people in the US are engaged in such jobs where their creativity is ignored, wasted, or subjugated. Now, let's say I know the meaning of ignored and wasted. I can guess the meaning of subjugated, that okay, it will have the same tone as these two. So, probably it is again about creativity not being utilized, right? Subjugation. I think many of you would have heard this word subjugation. The Britishers subjugated the Indian people, the Indian masses, basically to oppress. Okay, so in these jobs their creativity is being suppressed, oppressed, ignored, or wasted. Creativity itself is not in danger, it's flourishing. Its flourishing is all around us. Its flourishing is all around us, in science and tech, arts and culture, in a rapidly revitalizing cities. But we still have a long way to go if we want to build a truly creative society that supports and rewards the creativity of each and every one of us. Right? So, creativity by itself is flourishing, that's not in danger, but we have a long way to go if we want to build the enablers, basically a society that supports creativity, rewards creativity of each and every one of us. Right? So this was this passage. Yes, we focused on the opening paragraph. We gathered key ideas on the way. We learned some new vocabulary words: serendipitously, serendipity, staunches, stultifying, right? Then we also saw a study here, right? We saw the viewpoint of another expert, Jane Jacobs, in this paragraph, the last paragraph, right? Then in this slide, on this slide, we saw what are the reasons that that can actually cause a lack of creativity, or basically creativity moves in line with socioeconomic divide, right? And the last bit, that okay, by and large we have creativity but we need enablers. So gather such key ideas on your way when you're reading a passage. That's the way to read it. Okay, don't get very caught up in little words like, let's say, wrung out of us, okay, or let's say subjugated, stultifying. You're able to get the broad idea of these words from the context, and that is what is required. Okay, so now let's come to the questions. We have to see some question types today. So let's see this question. The first question: in the author's view, cities promote human creativity for all of the following reasons, except that they. Read the four options and tell me what should be the answer. In case you want to go back, then again tell me. I'll go to that slide. Yes. Let's see what you say. Waiting for your response. This is actually, see, this is right now, I mean, March is also about to end. So this is the time when you cement your concepts and then start applying them once the mocks begin. So those who are attending this session right now, you are actually doing the right thing, because a lot of students, they begin later, right? They think that, okay, we don't really need that much time, but somewhere or the other, their fundamentals can suffer because of that. Okay, the basics, the techniques that you need to cement, you need time for that. Okay, if you straight away just start, you jump into a test straight away without any fundamentals whatsoever, that can be counterproductive at times. Okay, so I've got 3, 4. All right, that's okay. That's okay. See, we can go back in case you feel that, okay, this, I am not very sure of the answer for this question, then you don't need to mark right away. You just need to remember where this was, mentioned in the passage. So your retention plays an important role here. So can anybody tell me where this was mentioned? Cities promote human creativity and the reasons for that. Where were they mentioned? I showed you 3 slides here. So on which slide were these reasons mentioned? Anybody? In the beginning, in the end, in the middle? In the beginning, in the second paragraph. Cities are the true fonts of creativity with their diverse populations, dense social networks, and public spaces where people can meet spontaneously and serendipitously. With their infrastructure and finance, with their infrastructure for finance, organization, and trade, they allow those ideas to be swiftly actualized. So these 3 factors, they help in creating ideas. This factor of infrastructure, it helps in realizing those ideas. Nowhere have we talked about culture. So yes, absolutely correct. Those who are saying 4, 4 is the answer. Okay. Good, Kirti. 4th is the answer. Good, Anirban. 3, yes, they provide that network, dense social networks plus infrastructure for finance, organization, and trade that enable ideas to be actualized, to become reality. This is mentioned, so you had to find out the one that was not mentioned. That's why 4. Cultural activities, no, not given. So that's how you answer such questions. This was a direct question, okay? Because the answer lay in a specific paragraph. You just had to read that paragraph, right? You just had to, in case you, let's say, some of you must have remembered these details. Very good. In case you remember it, nothing like it, okay? Those who don't, it's okay. It's again absolutely fine. You can always go back and just cross check it, right? So I went back, I cross checked, I saw that, okay, the first 3 options, they are mentioned, and then I marked 4 as the answer. But you do have to remember where this idea was mentioned. So I should have that kind of retention that I read it in the beginning in perhaps para 2, right? So these are retention based questions. They test your retention. The answer will lie within the passage because it's a direct question, right? And however, the answer lies within the passage. It can be based in one it can actually, all the points can be in one paragraph itself, as we saw in this question, or they could be spread in multiple paragraphs. That can also happen. Then the question becomes slightly more time consuming when this happens. And your retention plays an even bigger role. Because if, let's say, 4 options, these 4 options have been taken from 4 paragraphs, right? Then you need to remember, okay, this option, it talks about something that was there in para 4. This talks about something that was there in para 1, right? So retention plays an all the more important role when it is a multi-para based question. And the options can state something that is directly quoted from the passage. That means I picked up a line and put it as it is. Or I picked up something that was mentioned in the passage and put it in my own words. That is called paraphrasing, right? So this is the nature of direct questions. For such questions, I advise you to first of all read each and every option carefully. Then if you remember what you read exactly in the passage, eliminate and mark. If you don't, go back once, cross check, eliminate, and then mark, right? That's the strategy. These are scoring questions. Now, coming to the second one, The author uses ironic in the third paragraph to point out that. What is the author trying to point out by using the word ironic? Read the options. Read the options once and we can go back in case you want. Read the options. So why has the author used the word ironic? Let's see. As for what staunches creativity, so now you again need to remember this, although it was stated that okay in so and so paragraph. As for what staunches creativity, that's easy. If ironic, it's the very institutions that we build to manage, exploit, and perpetuate the fruits of creativity. Our big bureaucracies, and sad to say, too many of our schools. These are the ones that end up staunching creativity. Okay, creativity is disruptive. Schools and organizations are regimented, standardized, and stultifying. Okay, so now based on this, tell me what the answer should be. Kirti has already told us an answer. Others, do we agree? Is this the right answer? Yes. Neil, what do you say? Anirban? Anirban says 2. All right. Neil? Radha? Vishal, what do you say? Hmm. Okay then. I'll answer the queries of these two students only. Hina says 2. Okay. Perfect. 2 is the answer. Institutions created to promote creativity eventually stifle it. That is the irony. Now see here again. The passage did not ask you the meaning of the word ironic, right? Examiner ने ये नहीं बोला ironic का meaning बताओ. But what did the examiner ask you? Why has this word been used in the passage? What is the purpose that this word is serving in that paragraph? Okay. So in case, I'm not saying that it's an essential, but in case I know the meaning of ironic, in case I know what an irony is, it will become very easy for me to answer this question. So, what is irony? It's a figure of speech, right? What do I mean by figure of speech? Something that is used to actually enhance, beautify language and influence people through your language. That is a figure of speech. For instance, alliteration. It makes words appear so beautiful and lyrical, right? The big boy bought a bike. BBB. Okay, Betty bought butter, but the butter was bitter. So that's what alliteration does. It makes it beautiful. Irony, sarcasm, satire, they make your language more impactful. So irony is when what is expected does not happen, rather the opposite of it happens. That is called an irony. Sometimes it's humorous also. Okay, so for instance, if there's a student who lives very near the school that he or she is in, but is always late for school, that is an irony, right? Somebody living so near the school and still being late for school every day. So when what is expected does not happen, rather the opposite of it happens. So these institutions, these schools, these bureaucracies, why were they created? To promote creativity. But what are they doing? They're actually killing that creativity, stifling that creativity. That is what is ironic about them. Right? So 2 is the answer here. Good. Yash, correct. Absolutely. All of you correct. And I think this question became easy because of the options also. The options were very far apart, right? There are only two options here that actually talk about institutions. So bureaucracies and institutions. These two, 1 and 3 could be very easily eliminated. Successful cities have not really been discussed. So this becomes alien. Yes, not discussed. Eliminated. 2 is our answer. And we have also understood the meaning of irony now. So this question could be called an inference question because here you had to understand what did the author imply by using the word creative. Author ने ironic से क्या imply किया था? in the context of the passage. So you had to understand the context. What is context? The surrounding words. So just by reading ironic, you'll not understand what is meant by the author. You have to read the next sentence. Very, very crucial. So it was based on a contextual understanding of this paragraph, or a section of this paragraph at least. Right? So it became an inference question. Your understanding was required. It became a comprehension based question. Okay. The answer is in such questions is based on the text. It's not there within the text. बिल्कुल लिखा नहीं होगा आपके लिए, right? It will not really be written to the T for you. It will rather be based on it. You will have to understand and derive it. And you can be asked inference questions based on a sentence, based on a paragraph, and even based on the entire passage. So the question can be, what can be inferred from this passage? And there can be 4 options. So those questions would be based on your overall understanding of the passage then. Then you can't go back and reread the entire passage. You don't have time to do that, right? So you have to approach different questions of inference in a different manner. If it is based on a sentence, go back, read that sentence, a sentence above it, a sentence below it. Based on a paragraph, read that paragraph completely. See what it is trying to say. What is the author trying to imply through it? Okay. Sometimes seeing, okay, what preceded it, what follows it also helps. But if it is based on the entire passage, you can't go back. Therefore, when you read the passage, you have to grasp the key ideas along with it, because it will help you even in these questions. Okay, passage-based inference questions. And always remember, elimination is the key. So you must have seen, this is what I did. I eliminated in this question. In inference questions, always eliminate. Because, see, just after reading option 1, I might feel that option 1 is the likely answer. lag raha hai, maybe ye answer. ऐसा लग रहा है. So if right at this juncture I mark it, there might be a better option that I didn't even see. So always eliminate in these questions. Right? Okay. Hope you've understood this. Any queries, you can keep asking me. Okay. I don't want this to be a one-way thing. If you have any queries, if you want to learn more about inference questions, anything, just ask. Okay. Right. And you can keep asking in the chat box. I'll keep answering, and we'll keep on, doing more questions as well. So this is our third question. The central idea of this passage. Yes. What do you think is the central idea, the main idea of this passage? Tell me through elimination. So read these options and tell me which options can be easily eliminated. पहले मुझे वो बताओ. Which can we eliminate? Yes. Which options can I eliminate? Okay, so I've got 2 responses. One can be eliminated. They are saying, acha, one is the Kirti Narhari. Is one the answer, or can one be eliminated? Radha is saying 2 can be eliminated. Very good, Radha. That's what I also did. When I looked at this question, I eliminated 2 right away, right? Because it is false as per my passage. I remembered that in the last paragraph, I read that creativity is not declining as such. It is flourishing in various areas like science and tech, art and culture. See, I'll show you this sentence. Creativity itself is not in danger. Its flourishing is all around us, right? So it is flourishing, and that is why 2 is false. Okay, what other option? Okay, Neil is saying 4 can also be eliminated. More people should work in jobs that engage their creative faculties. Very good, Neil. So In fact, this is the option that I also eliminated when I attempted this question. So first I eliminated 2 and then I eliminated 4. Why? Because does the author give any such advice? The author does show a 1968, the author does show, does talk about how in the US, 66% of people are engaged in non-creative jobs. Yes, that part is there. But has the author given any such advice or suggestion that more people should work in jobs that engage their creative faculties? ऐसा कोई advice I didn't see. This is going beyond the passage. It's taking a leap. Okay. The author hasn't said any such thing. And that's why eliminated. Okay. Kirti saying 1 is the answer. All right. SM, what do you want me to repeat? Now, between 1 and 3, the creativity divide is widening in societies in line with socio-economic trends. Now, this bit is there in the passage. Agreed. This is there in the passage. We do talk about how creativity or the lack of it follows the same general contours of the great socio-economic divide. But is it the central idea, or is it just a narrow discussion happening within the passage? It is a part of this passage. It is not the heart of this passage, right? And that is why it is not the answer. 1 is the answer. Good. Those who said 1. Social interaction is necessary to nurture creativity. That is the essence, the heart of this passage. That is what the author emphasizes a lot in the first paragraph also. That creativity is a social process. That is why the author says that cities foster creativity, because cities, they involve interactions. That is why the author says that if there is a socio-economic divide, since creativity is a social process, if there is a social divide and economic divide, then creativity will be hampered. Yes? So the entire discussion is based on this idea of the fact that creativity is a social process. And that's why 1 is my answer. Okay? Absolutely correct. Kirti, Narhari, Hina, Neil, yes, all of you are correct. Okay? And I hope you've also learned the approach to attempt this question. This is an overall comprehension based question. Of course, you can't go back and reread the entire passage. You don't have that kind of time. So, how do you have to approach? You read all the 4 options, then you start eliminating. Your answer will always be that option that is closest to the essence of the passage, right? That is not something that is taking a leap. By closest, I mean this, not these kind of options. They are not going to take leaps, right? A variant of a main idea question is title. What is the likely title, or what is the most appropriate title of this passage? The title of a passage is nothing but the main idea of the passage captured in brief. Yes, in a few words. So you have to follow the exact same approach even while attempting such a question. And in such questions, yes, opening and closing paragraphs do help you. I am not saying that they contain the answer, or they are you just have to read the opening and closing paragraphs and you will get the answer correct. No, that's a misconception. But yes, they do help you. Okay. So for instance, here the opening paragraph stated that creativity is a social process. So it did help. All right. Okay. Secretly, music. What are we talking about? Okay. Were you typing this in some other chat and you typed it here by mistake? Right. So, coming to the next question. Now, so far we have learned how to attempt direct questions, inference questions, main idea questions. Let's see this question. Jane Jacobs believed that cities that are more creative. Now there are 4 options. Yes. Let's see what you say. Okay. I have got one response. Others? All right. So again, in case, let's say you read the four options, you are unsure about, let's say, two of them, right? You're not able to come to a conclusion about what the answer should be. So what should you do? You should go back. Because this is a paragraph based question, you can go back and reread that paragraph, right? So I once asked the great urbanist Jane Jacobs what makes some places more creative than others. She said essentially that the question was an easy one. All cities, she said, were filled with creative people. That's our default state as people. But some cities have had more than their shares of leaders, people, and institutions that blocked out that creativity. She called them squelchers. So these cities didn't turn out to be as creative as the ones where such people, such leaders, such institutions were not present. So cities that are more creative do not have such leaders, right? Such institutions that block creativity. So our answer should be option 3. Absolutely correct. Right? Good. All of you have said this only. Good. This was, again, this could be called a direct question. Okay, it was more or less a direct question because you had to go back and read that paragraph and you would have realized, okay, this is something that is there in the paragraph, the other things are not there, right? Okay, the 1968 study is used here to show that. What is this 1968 study showing us? Tell me. Yes, four options. Hmm. Why was that 1968 study mentioned? Okay, Kirti says two. Retention plays an important role. If you remember that study clearly, right? If you recall what was mentioned there, why was it mentioned, then you don't need to go back. Otherwise, in case you have an iota of doubt, in case two of the options are very close, then of course you can go back, reread that paragraph. That ensures accuracy. Don't think that it's wasting my time. Okay, so Kirti says 2, Radha says 2, Hina says 2. Others, Sanchit, Yash also says 2. All right. Okay, absolutely correct. 2 is the answer. Schooling today does not encourage creative thinking in children. That is the reason why the study was shown. Because remember, this study was mentioned right after I said that schools, institutions, organizations, bureaucracies, they are actually stifling creativity. Okay, so then we talked about this study wherein it was mentioned that by the time people were 25, only 2% of them answered creatively. Yes, so 2 is our answer. Absolutely good. Any query here? Any of the options that's not clear? It's not about the more children learn, the less creative they become. No, it's about the way our schools, our organizations, our bureaucracies are, the way they are so standardized, regimented. That is why children are not becoming creative. Not that because they are learning more, that's why they're becoming less creative. This is incorrect. Okay? This goes against the paragraph. This is false as per my passage. Technology not been discussed. This is alien as per my passage. So that's how you eliminate various options. Okay. All right. So this type of a question that we just did, wherein you were asked the purpose of a particular study that was mentioned in the passage. This question type is called the logical structure question. Why? What is so logical and structural about it? See, if you go back and look at that slide, let's look at this slide. Let me delete. No, not this one. Just a second. Still, let me delete. Yes, this one. So here, if you see, I first mentioned that how certain institutions, bureaucracies, etc. are killing creativity, right? Then I mentioned this study. Okay, so my whole point of mentioning this study was to give an evidence of how, so this served as an evidence. This study served as an evidence. I was just strengthening, substantiating my point that, schools, bureaucracies, organizations, they are actually killing creativity, right? So that is why it's a structure question, because the whole function of this paragraph is to give an evidence of something that was mentioned in a previous paragraph. It is related structurally. It is contributing to the skeleton of this passage, right? That's why it's a logical structure question. This is an evidence of an assertion that has been made in the previous paragraph. Okay, so in such questions, logical structure questions, of course, what are they based on? They are based on structure of the passage. So you have to look at the previous paragraph, you have to look at the subsequent paragraph, see how this paragraph, whether it is related to the previous paragraph, if yes, how, right? Whether it is related to the subsequent paragraph, if yes, how. What is the author's rationale? Fine, author ne study likhi. The author talked about this study, right? The author mentioned this study. But what was going on in his or her mind? What was his or her rationale behind talking about this study? Randomly to nahi baat kari hogi, right? So the answer is based on not just what this study mentioned, but also on why, right? So the context. Why did we introduce this discussion of this study? So content plus context. That is very important in a logical structure question. Some more question types under this head logical structure can be, if I asked you, so for instance, here I asked you what was the purpose of this paragraph, essentially. I could also ask you the purpose of a sentence, just one sentence. The purpose of an example. Let's say some example has been mentioned. I can say that why has the author given the example of, let's say, an MI10 phone in that paragraph. So that the author must be talking about some, let's say, features of that MI10 phone. So why is the author talking about its features? Was something related to features mentioned earlier? What is the point that the author is trying to prove or make? The context matters. Organization of the passage. Is it a problem solution passage? Organization मतलब उसका skeleton, passage का skeleton. Problem solution passage है. First paragraph talks about problem, then the next paragraph talks about solution. Introduction, body, conclusion type paragraph passage है. Right? Compare, contrast passage hai. So that is the organization of a passage, right? All of these come under the head of logical structure. So what do you have to do? Instead of just focusing on the content, focus on this skeleton. This is a skeleton that I have prepared for you. Focus on that bare skeleton. How are the ideas connected to each other? Okay, how are the ideas connected to each other? Right? That's how you attempt a logical structure question. Focus on the context, focus on the link that various paragraphs share with each other or various sentences share with each other. Enter the mind of the author and think, क्यों लिखा होगा उसमें, right? And eliminate, of course. Okay, any questions so far? It's just I who have been talking since the session started. Yes. Last question from this passage. The author's conclusions about the most creative cities in the US, paragraph 6, are based on his assumption that. So, when the author talks about the most creative cities in the US, the author must have made some assumption. And on that basis, he has made some conclusion also. So, the examiner is asking you, उसने क्या सोचा होगा? What must have been his or her assumption that enabled him to arrive at this conclusion? Yes? So read these options and then we'll go back. We'll go back to that paragraph. All right, I hope you've read the options. Let's see this one, this paragraph here. Read from here to here. So, I hope you've understood the author's point. I am not reading it out for you because somehow I tend to emphasize those areas that contain the answer or lead to the answer. So, this has to come from you. Yes. Let's see what you say. Kirti says 1, Aditi says 1 or 3. Others, yes, others. Radha says 4. All right. Yash, Hina, what do you say? Yes, come on. ऑथर ने क्या assumption ली है? This is a good question type. It's okay even if you get it wrong. It will be a new learning for you. Neil, what do you say? All right, then I'll tell you the answer. Hina says 1. Good. Kirti, Hina, both of you are correct. Yash, absolutely correct. Aditi, yes, it's 1, not 3. Why not 3? Because the author has not really taken this for granted that only this group should be valued in a society. Artists, musicians, writers, and so on. The author is not saying that, is not implying that the other group is less valuable. That, those 66% people are less valuable. The author's words do not convey any such thing, right? So that is why this is eliminated, because such implication we don't get from our paragraph that we read. But yes, the author is calling which set of people creative? Those that work with their mind. The author is saying that, okay, people who are, let's say, educators, writers, entrepreneurs, artists, musicians, okay, we are engaging our creative faculties to some extent. So then the author gives the example of these groups and says those of us who work with our minds. That means the author thinks that those people who do not work with their minds are not creative, are not engaged in creative pursuits. So those who are working by their hands, with their hands, they are not creative. That is what the author is assuming, is thinking, taking for granted. And that is why, yes, 1 is our answer. So these are called critical reasoning based questions. Okay, this question right here before you. This is a critical reasoning. It requires you to really understand the reasoning behind the author's argument. Author ने क्या सोच के बोला है जो बोला है. Okay, and there is a learning curve to these questions. Okay, they are based on logical reasoning. They do require learning of how to actually, you know, derive the author's assumptions, how to understand what the author must be thinking before making a certain statement or argument, how to strengthen the author's argument. If, let's say, the author has said something, how do I strengthen it? If the author has said something, how do I weaken it? So these are some question types that are covered in this area, and they do require a proper methodical learning, right? So we do take sessions on critical reasoning as part of your CAT teaching, and that prepares you for these type of questions as part of RC passages also. Okay. And the key in these questions is, again, you have to stick to the author's argument. Why am I saying this? Because certain students they tend to mark fourth as the answer. Most cities ignore or waste the creativity of low wage workers, right? Now, most cities, first of all, is problematic. The author did not say that most cities ignore or waste the creativity of low wage workers. Moreover, are cities doing it or are their jobs doing it? Right? So here we are not sticking to the argument if I am bringing in words like most, cities, etc. Moreover, this is not the key pillar on which this argument relies. The key pillar on which this argument relies is if you are using your mind, like these professions, you are creative. If you are, on the other hand, not using your mind, most of the cities, there are 66% people who are not using their mind, and therefore the author is calling them not creative. That is what this argument is kind of based, relying on. That's a pillar of this argument. So this is digressing from the real issue. Okay, 1 is our answer here. I hope everybody's understood this. Aditi, yes, Sheena, absolutely correct. Okay. Now, this too is not an assumption. This is rather a fact about the US. This is a fact about the US that the author offers us. Assumptions are not facts that are stated. Assumptions are what the author has thought in his or her mind. That needs to be true so that the author can actually come to the conclusion that the author has come to. Stated nahi hote hain facts wo. All right, they are not stated facts. Hope this is clear. All the options are clear to you, right? And these were some question types that we have discussed today. Direct questions, main idea question, title being a variant of it, inference based on sentence, a paragraph, an entire passage, logical structure question wherein we talked about the purpose of a paragraph, and reasoning questions where we talked about the assumption made by the author. Okay, good. All right, if you understood, nothing like it. I will see you in part 2 of this session because there are certain question types that we are yet to cover. For instance, the tone of a passage or the tone of a paragraph, right? Some further application questions. These we'll cover in the part 2. Okay. So I hope this will help you to some extent in understanding the various question types that can actually lead you to a 99 plus percentile in VARC score, in a VARC section, because the RC passages carry the highest weightage. So of course they matter a lot. Okay, in case you found value in this session, please go and press the like button right now. Okay, in case you want something else to be covered in the coming sessions, you can always comment in the comment section. Okay, I'll look at it and prepare sessions accordingly. Please do share this with your friends who are preparing for CAT 22. It will be a big help. Particularly now from April, you do need help, right? And yes, do subscribe to our channel in case you wish to receive automatic updates regarding our various sessions. Okay. This is our CAT PI program that is currently going on. In case any of your friends have good calls and the interviews are yet to happen, then you can always enroll in this. You can always tell them to enroll in this. And this is our ongoing CAT 2022 batch. Vikas sir, Sanojam sir, Saral sir, all of them are teaching there, right? These are the features, so you can consider enrolling. And in case you have any queries that you wish to address later on as well, we have a Telegram group for this purpose, right, called BYJU'S MBA Doubts. You can join that Telegram session. We're also present on Instagram, Facebook, other social media platforms, so you can follow us there. We keep on posting relevant content there as well, right? I hope you enjoyed the session. Welcome all of you. See you next time. Bye.